Chapter 1. The day everything was taken. The rain was falling the day my life collapsed. Not the dramatic kind that pours in sheets, but a quiet, relentless drizzle that soaked through clothes and bones alike. I remember standing outside the glass building that bore my company's name, watching employees walk past me without recognition, as if I were already erased. Or in dynamics, my dream, my blood, my decade of sleepless nights, and it was no longer mine. 3 hours earlier, I had still been the CEO. 3 hours later, I was nothing. It had started like any other morning. I woke up before my alarm, my mind already racing through numbers, meetings, strategies. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee, her coffee, and for a brief moment, I felt that rare sense of peace that only comes when you believe your life is stable. Lena was in the kitchen, back to me, dressed in a fitted navy blazer. Her hair was tied neatly, professional and composed. She looked every bit like the capable COO she had become. The woman I had trusted with everything. "You're up early," she said without turning around. "Big presentation," I replied, loosening my tie. "If this acquisition goes through, Orion will double in value by next quarter." She smiled then, soft, supportive, familiar. "I know," she said. "You've worked so hard for this." I believed her. That was my mistake. The boardroom was packed, every seat filled, every screen lit, legal representatives on one side, senior investors on the other. I stood at the head of the table, remote in hand, confident and prepared, until I noticed something wrong. My nameplate was missing. I frowned slightly, glancing toward the assistant. She avoided my eyes. Then Lena stood up. "Before we begin," she said calmly, "there's a procedural matter we need to address." My heart skipped. She clicked the remote. The screen behind her changed, not to financial projections, but to legal documents. Transfer of shares. Emergency board resolution. Vote of no confidence. CEO removal. The room felt suddenly too small. "What is this?" I asked, my voice steady despite the tightening in my chest. Lena met my gaze. No warmth, no hesitation. "It's the result of months of review," she said. "The board has concluded that your leadership poses a risk to the company's future." I laughed, actually laughed, because the absurdity of it all was too much. "You're joking!" No one else smiled. The chairman cleared his throat. "The motion passed this morning. Your shares have been redistributed under Clause 17B of the shareholder agreement." I turned toward my lawyer. "You said my shares were protected." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "They were," he said quietly, "until your fiancée exercised her proxy rights." The word fiancé echoed in my ears like a gunshot. I looked back at Lena. "You had no right," I said. She tilted her head slightly. "I had every right. You gave it to me." I remembered then, late nights, exhaustion, blind trust. The documents I had signed without reading fully. The power I had handed over because I loved her, because I trusted her. I was escorted out of my own building by security. No shouting, no scene. Just cold professionalism. Employees whispered as I passed. Some stared. Others pretended not to notice. The elevator doors closed, and with them, 10 years of my life. Outside, the rain welcomed me like an old enemy. I stood there, soaked and numb, when my phone buzzed. A message from Lena. "I'm sorry it had to be this way, but you were holding us back." "Us!" I didn't reply. Instead, I went home. The apartment no longer felt like home. Half of my things were gone. Drawers empty. Closet cleared on one side. Even the framed photo of us at our engagement dinner was missing. Only one thing remained. An envelope on the table. Inside were photographs. Lena. And him. My boss. The man who had once been my mentor. The investor who had convinced me to scale faster, risk more, trust him. Photos taken in hotel lobbies. Private lounges. A hand on her waist. Her smile. Intimate, unguarded. My hands shook. Then my phone rang. His name flashed on the screen. I answered. "I wanted you to hear it from me," he said smoothly. "Business is business, and Lena, well, she made the smarter choice." I said nothing. "You built something impressive," he continued. "But you lacked the killer instinct." "She doesn't." The line went dead. That night I drank alone, not to forget, but because remembering hurt too much. I replayed every moment, every warning sign I had ignored. The late meetings, the sudden secrecy, the way decisions slowly stopped including me. I had been dismantled piece by piece, and I hadn't seen it coming. At dawn, I stood by the window, watching the city wake up without me. Everything I had built was gone. My company, My future, the woman I was supposed to marry, all stolen. The pain didn't kill me. It hardened me. I clenched my fists, nails biting into skin. If I ever get another chance, I whispered into the empty room. I won't just take it back. I'll make them watch. As the sun rose, something inside me snapped. Not into despair, but into resolve. I didn't know it yet, but this was the end of my first life, and the beginning of my revenge. Chapter 2. The Ashes of What I Built. The city didn't know my name anymore. That realization hit me hardest. On the third morning after I was forced out of my own company, I stood across the street from the glass tower. I had once entered every day with purpose, watching people rush in and out as if nothing had changed. For them, nothing had. For me, everything had ended, and something darker had begun. I had built that company from nothing. A rented room, borrowed money, sleepless nights, and dreams that tasted like blood and coffee. I remembered the first contract I signed, the first employee I hired, the first year we didn't almost collapse. Every milestone replayed in my mind like a cruel montage, and now my name had been erased from the walls. Inside that building, she sat in my chair, the woman I had trusted with my future, the woman who had smiled beside me in photographs while quietly sharpening the knife. I turned away before the anger showed on my face. Rage, I had learned, was dangerous when uncontrolled. I needed clarity, not chaos. The apartment felt colder each day. Without her presence, the silence had weight. I noticed things I hadn't before. How empty half the closet was. How the kitchen lacked warmth. How the walls echoed with memories that now mocked me. I opened my laptop and stared at the screen. I still had contacts. Not many, but enough. People I had helped quietly. Investors I had once saved from bad deals. Lawyers who owed me favors they never thought I'd collect. But favors weren't weapons. Information was. I started with the documents she had used against me. The legal transfer of shares was airtight, too perfect. That alone told me she hadn't acted alone. Someone had guided her step by step. Someone powerful. Someone who understood how to bury a man legally and completely. My former boss. The man I had once believed was a mentor. The realization didn't hurt. It clarified. I pulled on a jacket and left the apartment. I didn't know where I was going, only that staying still would suffocate me. By evening, I was sitting in a quiet cafe on the edge of the city, the kind of place forgotten by time. The owner didn't recognize me, and that was a relief. I ordered black coffee and listened. People talked more than they realized. A complaint about layoffs here. A rumor about internal power struggles there. And then, the words I had been waiting for drifted across the room. They say the new management is unstable, someone whispered. Yeah, especially after that sudden takeover. I heard the investors aren't happy. I didn't smile. Not yet. Unstable systems collapse faster when pressure is applied in the right place. That night, I received my first call from her since everything happened. I watched the phone vibrate on the table. Her name lit up the screen like a ghost. I didn't answer. She called again and again. On the fourth attempt, she left a message. Her voice was calm, too calm, controlled. The same voice she used when she wanted something. We need to talk, she said. This doesn't have to get ugly. I laughed quietly, the sound bitter in my throat. It already was. Days turned into weeks. I lived simply, deliberately. I sold what I didn't need. I moved my remaining funds into accounts no one else knew existed. I disappeared from the circles that once applauded me. And in that silence I rebuilt. Not a company, a plan. I studied everything, corporate law, hostile takeovers, internal sabotage that looked like incompetence from the outside. I tracked her decisions, the contracts she signed too quickly, the alliances she trusted too easily. Power changes people, and arrogance blinds them. One evening, as rain streaked the windows of my temporary apartment, I received an unexpected email. Subject, you were right. It was from an investor who had walked away the day I was removed. A man who had once doubted my instincts. Now he wanted to talk. I stared at the screen for a long time. This wasn't victory, but it was the first crack in their perfect illusion. I closed the laptop and looked out into the city lights. Somewhere out there, she believed she had won. She believed I was broken, finished, forgotten. She had no idea that the man she destroyed was no longer the man she knew. And when the fall came, it wouldn't be loud, it would be surgical. Chapter 3. The pieces begin to move. By the third month after losing everything, the world had already decided I was finished. That's what made it easy. People stop watching a man they believe is broken. They talk freely around him. They underestimate him. And in that silence, plans grow teeth. Every morning I followed the same routine. Coffee, laptop, news, numbers, names, patterns. The company that once bore my signature was bleeding, not openly, but internally. Projects delayed, investors nervous, contracts rewritten too quickly, power struggles disguised as smiles. She was rushing. That was her first mistake. From the outside, she looked untouchable. Magazine covers, industry panels, interviews where she spoke about vision and resilience, never mentioning the man she'd pushed out to claim it. When my name came up, she called me a chapter that had ended. I watched every interview in silence, not because it hurt, but because she revealed more than she realized. Late one evening, I met my first ally. He wasn't powerful. He wasn't famous. He was an accountant who had been fired quietly 2 weeks after I was removed. Official reason, restructuring. Real reason, he asked too many questions. We sat across from each other in a small diner that smelled like burnt coffee and old vinyl seats. His hands shook when he slid a folder toward me. I shouldn't still have this, he whispered. Inside were internal transfers, shell companies, and a timeline that didn't match public reports. Money moving in circles, assets shifting names, a company being hollowed out from the inside. She wasn't just running the company, she was draining it. That night I didn't sleep. I mapped everything on my wall, dates, names, weak points. The former boss wasn't the brain behind it. He was a shield, a loud one. She was quieter, smarter, more dangerous, and arrogant. She assumed I was gone. A week later, I made my first move. Not against her. Against the market? Through an anonymous investment group, I quietly bought small stakes in companies tied to hers, suppliers, logistics partners, tech firms buried deep in her supply chain. No headlines, no announcements, just leverage. At a public business event, I watched her from across the room. She laughed easily, accepted compliments, shook hands like a queen. Then her phone vibrated. Once. Twice. Her smile didn't fade, but her eyes shifted. That was the moment I knew. She felt it. She just didn't know where it was coming from. That night, she called me for the first time since everything ended. I didn't answer. Not because I was afraid, because the hunt had finally begun. And this time, I wasn't chasing her. I was closing in. Chapter 4. The Trap Tightens. Power doesn't collapse loudly. It cracks quietly, one pressure point at a time. By the time she realized something was wrong, the damage was already layered too deep to undo. The first call came from a supplier in Singapore. Then a logistics partner delayed shipments without explanation. A tech firm suddenly renegotiated terms. Cold, formal, unmovable. None of it was dramatic. None of it was illegal. It was strategic. From my side of the city, I watched the dominoes fall through numbers, not headlines. Revenue curves bending downward. Risk reports growing thicker. Emergency meetings scheduled and rescheduled again. She still didn't know it was me. That was the beauty of it. At a closed-door executive meeting, voices rose for the first time since she took control. The former boss, the man who helped her betray me, pushed back harder than usual. His patience was thinning. He felt the ground shifting beneath him. She blamed him. He blamed the market. Neither blamed me. After the meeting, she stood alone in the glass conference room. City lights reflecting off the windows like cracks in ice. For the first time, the mask slipped. Her shoulders tensed. Her jaw tightened. Fear had entered the room. That night she went digging and found nothing. Every move I made was legal, clean, buried under layers of intermediaries. Shells inside shells. She searched for my name and found only silence. Silence is terrifying when you know someone should be there. Meanwhile, I stepped into public again, carefully. Not as the man she destroyed. As a consultant, a single photo appeared online. Me shaking hands with a mid-sized investor. Neutral caption, no drama. But people noticed. They always do when ghosts reappear. Her assistant saw it first, then her legal team, then her. She stared at the image longer than she should have. I knew because she came to my office the next day. No announcement, no warning. She stood in the doorway like someone returning to a place they once owned, eyes scanning the room for proof of dominance that wasn't there anymore. I didn't stand. I didn't smile. I let the silence speak. You planned this, she said quietly. I folded my hands, calm, measured. No, I replied. You assumed I wouldn't survive. That was the moment she understood. Not everything, but enough. She left without another word. 2 weeks later, the former boss panicked. Investors questioned him directly. Auditors requested files he couldn't clean fast enough. The shield cracked. He reached out to me. I agreed to meet. Not to save him, to let him fall slower. By the end of the month, the company stock dipped publicly for the first time since my removal. Analysts blamed internal instability. They weren't wrong. On a quiet evening, I stood alone on a balcony overlooking the city. The same city where I'd once been humiliated, fired, erased. Now it was holding its breath. She thought I was chasing her. But this was gravity, and she was already falling. Chapter 5. Public Execution. The truth doesn't always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it walks into the room calmly, sits down, and lets everyone else destroy themselves. The boardroom was full that morning. Executives, investors, legal advisors. Media representatives waiting outside like vultures with polished smiles. The atmosphere felt ceremonial, too quiet, too clean. She sat at the head of the table. Still powerful, still composed, but not untouchable anymore. The former boss arrived late, his tie crooked, eyes hollow. He didn't look at her. He didn't look at anyone. He knew. This meeting wasn't about saving the company. It was about deciding who would be blamed. The chairman cleared his throat and nodded toward me. That was my cue. I stood, not as the man they fired, but as the man they invited back. Consultant, external auditor, silent shareholder. Every eye followed me. I placed a single tablet on the table and connected it to the screen. No accusations, no speeches, just data, transaction trails, internal emails, backdated approvals, quiet transfers routed through familiar accounts. The room grew colder with every slide. Her face tightened. The former boss collapsed first. He tried to speak. Tried to interrupt. Tried to laugh it off. No one laughed. When the email appeared, the one where they discussed removing me, her composure cracked. Just for a second. But that second was enough. The chairman leaned back. This constitutes fraud, he said calmly. Security was already moving. The former boss stood abruptly, shouting excuses, pointing fingers. It didn't matter. He was escorted out like a criminal from a crime drama, head down, dignity stripped. Then all eyes turned to her. She looked at me, not with hatred, with disbelief. You planned this from the start, she whispered. I met her gaze, steady and unflinching. No, I said quietly. I planned to survive. Her position was terminated effective immediately. Shares frozen. Assets under investigation. She walked out alone. No shouting. No tears, just the sound of heels echoing into nothing. Hours later, the news broke. Former CEO and senior executive removed amid internal fraud investigation. My name appeared in the article. Not as a victim, as a successor. Weeks passed. The company stabilized under new leadership, mine. Clean books, transparent systems. Trust rebuilt slowly, brick by brick. One evening I returned to the old office. The one they took from me. Same city view. Different man. I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. As I stood by the window, I thought about her, not with anger, not even regret. Just distance. Rebirth isn't about revenge. It's about becoming someone your past can't touch anymore. And this time, I didn't look back.